Today on Coach B Talks, I'm here with Will Skett, head baseball coach at Valley College. How did your love for the game start?
Well, I started out as a young man, T-ball. Back then it was no real uniforms, jeans. They gave you a dual-purpose shirt with a name written across the front. And for as long as I can remember, picking up a bat and having a ball in the backyard was, to me, the most exciting thing that there was. It was there that I kind of took an appreciation for it, but more importantly, it was something I look forward to do every single day. And going on, working my way up through Little League and whatnot, it was something my dad and I could both share. He wasn't very good at it. He was a cross-country runner, and being a single dad, that was his way to kind of, I'll say, kind of vicariously live through me playing the game of baseball. And it made him happy, it made him proud, and I actually was pretty good at it. So, finished up there, played some really good American Legion teams, ended up going to a high school, Reseda High School here in the San Fernando Valley, which didn't have the best program at that point, but it was still the opportunity to really engage in there and play football. And all the way through there, never had one point where I stopped loving the game of baseball. It was my outlet, it was my part of my lifestyle, and it was a way for me to really allow myself to do something other than just go to school, come back, and make friends doing it. So, did that for 4 years, excelled at it, was, all Valley, all League, all the way up through high school, or through my senior year. And since I was an undersized kid, I didn't really have many looks out of high school. So ended up having a couple of junior colleges, Pierce and LA Valley, come by, take a look. At that point I was probably 5'11", 165, 170 pounds, but I could still run. And being a kid from Reseda, went over to Valley, and their head coach over there, Chris Johnson, really took a liking to me. So it was there, and that's where I made my decision to go play start my college career.
And how was the JUCO experience like?
So I was there in '94, and back then junior college was kind of getting to the way it is now with the portal and everything. It was extremely difficult. Guys were they had a chip on their shoulder because they weren't picked by Division I schools. And it was just like hard-nosed the way the game was played. Kind of more of you had something to prove. And so going there and playing over there, and obviously in junior college the fields aren't traditionally really good. You don't have a lot of money for guys to have great equipment. So it just turns into that mindset of you got to grind. And it was kind of in that place over at Valley where I started learning what the daily grind of college baseball was like. Early morning lifts, going to school, going to practice, being there 2 to 5, going home, and then eating dinner, doing my homework or study hall, and then really just grinding again, doing it, and competing. There were so many guys that were good players that had come from other schools around the area, and you were competing, and there was always somebody trying to take your job. So junior college at that point, like I said, the way it's getting to be back now, the level of competition was amazing.
And what did you do to stand out from other players?
I think that because I kind of grew into my body my freshman year, I put on 30 pounds.
Okay.
Really being in the weight room. I hadn't really been in the weight room in high school. I could always run. I was a plus runner. And I think the ability of putting on size, and the ball came off my bat pretty well, started to stand out more, and I think I just kind of outworked everybody. I was told earlier on that I was never going to play college baseball, and I was a good baseball player, but I wasn't going to do it.
Right.
And I just had that chip on my shoulder. My dad always instilled in me that if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So I really like the emphasis on that. And kind of along the way, we learned this saying. It's somewhere he is working and I am not. So when we meet, he will win and I will not. So I just never want to be outworked, I guess.
And you had your time at Valley College. What happened after that?
So I was there at Valley College, and after my freshman year, I started to get some looks from Division I schools. Ultimately, taking a bunch of different recruiting trips and deciding on going to Long Beach State.
Okay.
And so after Valley, I went to Long Beach State for my sophomore and junior year. Had really good years over there. Played for an incredible coach, Dave Snow, and kind of really learned the mental side of the game as well as the physical. Learned how to really play the game, and really instilled. Long Beach State is known for being called the Dirtbags, and it is just a gritty, bunt, read ball in the dirt, find a way on, get hit by a pitch, and just outplay, out-hustle, and out-compete every opponent that you play against. And there it was, you put the two and two together, work ethic, learning the game a little bit more, but now really learning how to deal with adversity. We had a sports psychologist there, and his name was Ken Reseda. And Ken was amazing. He passed away in, I believe it was 2017, but he was one of the pioneers that brought sports psychology to baseball, and teaching you how to deal with adversity, control what you can control, one pitch at a time, and all of these things where having focal points and not letting other outside external things get in the way with what you're trying to do. And much of that has just transformed into the way that I view life now and the way that I handle things, because it's more of what you're going to do with your life with these lessons than just baseball. They're great outlets. It's nice to have in the moment, but learning how to control what you can control is
right.
Amazing.
And how long were you at Long Beach for?
I was there my sophomore and my junior year.
Okay. And what happened after that? How did you get to the next level? Was there a time where you thought you weren't going to get to where you're at, or how did you make that leap?
So the way that the baseball draft works is you have to either be 21 or a junior, and once you get to Division I level, you can be drafted out of high school, drafted out of junior college, but you have to be either 21 or your junior year. So I knew that I had a really good sophomore year. I had excelled. I platooned to start in the very beginning. There was a left-handed bat. I was a right-handed hitter. So coach kind of played the percentages and the odds up until about I'd say about 20 games in or so, and then the guy that I was competing against, he got hurt, and at that point I never came out. I played every single game the rest of the time I was there. And after my sophomore year, it was then that I knew what I needed to do, how I needed to get better, and what I did. And I spent that entire summer fixing things. And I came back for my junior year, had a really good junior year, and ultimately was drafted in June of '96 by the Toronto Blue Jays.
Nice. And how was that like? I mean, you're born and raised in Reseda, you do the Valley, and then you go to Long Beach, and then here you are at the big stage. How did you handle that, and what did you do differently, or did you keep your same routine throughout those years?
Yeah, you nailed it right there with your routine, and that's where I say that, going to Long Beach State and having Ken Reseda and the coaching staff and instilling routines and lifestyles, that when I got there, it was almost like I had already been prepared to be there. I saw there were a lot of kids that came from college programs, or even high-round high school kids that the game was too fast for them. And at Long Beach State, I played at Blair Field, which anyone that's ever been there or been around it knows it's a graveyard. Now they've moved the fences in, I believe, 10 or 15 feet, but it used to be 400 to center field, and the lines were, I believe, 335. But at nighttime, you have the beach air comes in, and the balls go to die there. So it was a really big yard. Not a lot of home runs hit, unless it was like a Sunday day game. So when I got to pro ball, I was a doubles guy, ball in the gap. My first year, I went in there in the New York Penn League, which is when you sign in June. Back then they have what was called short season. So you had all the high school kids and college kids that were drafted to go out and play in. There was a couple different leagues. There was the Pioneer League and the New York Penn League. And so I went to the New York Penn League. I was in St. Catharines, Canada. And my first year there, it wasn't like playing at Blair Field. The ball actually, doubles were now home runs. So my first year out, I led the New York Penn League in home runs. Had a really good first year coming in there. Finished up that year, and they sent me out to play the first year, because then I went back to next year to spring training, and I skipped low A ball and I went to high A ball, which is the Florida State League. Had a really good start to that. Led that league in home runs just up to the All-Star break, and I was very fortunate to get promoted to Double A at that point. And that was different. It was the game. You start to learn at the higher the level goes up. Not only the faster the game gets, but more the pitchers start to control multiple pitches. In pro ball, guys all throw hard. It's just they consistently throw it. And when you start to get to Double A and Triple A and even in the big leagues, it's the difference is who can consistently locate that pitch, who can consistently throw a secondary pitch for a strike early in the count. And so after that, I went and played winter ball after completing my season there in Australia.
Wow.
And that was really cool. I was in Sydney, Australia, where it was, so our winter is their summer. So I left out around October and then came back around February, and it was probably one of the most fun times I've had in my life. And so in that, and then going in the next year and starting out in Double A, and once again having a really good year there. Spring training was really good, and it was one of those things where you start to see yourself and you kind of realize, is baseball the way that life is going to be, or is it, you start thinking outside of it, because at that point I was 24 years old, and I was 24 years old, and I started to struggle at the Double A level, and I went there, and I guess I kind of was on my own cloud nine. Routines didn't stay the same, kind of got away from myself a little bit. And unfortunately, it was one of those where you run into, a coach who it took me that long in my life not to agree with or get on the same page with. And so he and I didn't really get along. I was struggling a little bit, and they sent me back down to A-ball to finish up the year. So went down to A-ball and absolutely killed it. Was back in an element with a coach that I really enjoyed, really liked, and finished up down there in I think like in the 320s. So after that was done, went to spring training again. Came back, went to no winter ball that year, kind of took it off. Went out there and went to spring training, and was going on the AAA roster for the team. So when you get to spring training, you're put on a team. A ball, a low A, high A, Double A, whatever it is. So when you play your games, these are the guys that you're going out with. And unfortunately, the manager that I had in AAA that year was going to be the same manager that I had in Double A. And I kind of lost my love for the game with this guy, where it was now started to become work, and it started to, it was no longer fun, and it was looking forward to going to the yard turned into this nightmare, to where I always told myself that at some point, if I ever coach baseball, I would never be the guy that makes anyone feel like that. So go out that year, finish it up, come back, and it was at that point that I kind of realized that there were some other paths in life that I wanted to try to take. And so I started looking at other sources or jobs to go, and I actually found a really good job in between after that, and then I hung them up. It was, I hate to say it, but there was that one coach that ruined a dream for a little boy.
And suddenly, you're this guy, you went through your journey of playing the game. What things did you do? What did you do to cope with all that gone now, and now you're in the real world?
Oh, so it's, like you said, it's a game, and I realized at some point, we're all told we're no longer going to play this game anymore. And I am so thankful for the journey that I had and the ability to deal with adversity and cope with everyday life. It's
Right.
Not everything's going to go your way. It's how you're going to deal with it. Not everything is all rainbows and sunshines. But I'm very thankful for baseball. It paid for my education, allowed me to see the world, let me buy my first home, and without it, I don't. And the team atmosphere and learning how to be a team guy and putting other people first and making the team your priority. Some of those things are just, I still instill those goals and it's part of my lifestyle these days.
And for someone that's currently going with what you went through in that time where this coach kind of ruined your dream, what advice would you give them if they're like, I want to pull out? What would you tell them?
I would say what I should have done, or I look back, you always second guess yourself. I probably should have had multiple conversations. It was the manager, he was from Venezuela. For whatever reason, our personalities just clashed. And looking at it now, I probably would have told myself I would have had more conversations or wrote it out, but I got to that point where I kind of more or less just thought, he hates me, it's not going to change, it's not going to do it. And it allowed it to affect every single portion, my daily routines, going to the field early, lifting, putting in the extra work. And I look back at it now, and not so much he was to blame, but there were other ways that I could have handled that a lot better as well.
So fast forward, you're done now. What did you do to stick to the game?
Finished up staying with the game. In 2011, I opened up a hitting facility in Chatsworth. It was called the Hitting Zone. So started doing that and started doing a little bit of coaching and lessons. And at that point, I think my son was 5 years old. So I started helping out. He was at Sierra Madre Little League and started helping out over there in the league, coaching a little bit, and never thought I would actually be a coach itself. But I started to really find that passion and love for the game, being out there with him and being on the field and being able to teach my skills and expertise to some of these younger kids. And at the end of the day, watch them smile a lot more and learn a little bit and kind of grow. So did that for a few years, and then in 2017, there was a small high school over in West Hills called Faith Baptist.
Okay.
And Faith Baptist had reached out, they were looking for a head coach, and I started to kind of think about it a little bit and said, why not? So I took over as their coach. Small program, they have a very small population of kids in there. Most of them are football players or play cross country. Very few are just baseball only. So took that program over, and we actually excelled for the 3 years I was there, winning the league every year, and we were bridesmaids every year going to the state championship. We never won it, but we got there a couple times with a bunch of guys who were, like I said, a couple baseball players, but mostly football players, basketball, but they bought in, and that's when I kind of knew that coaching was going to be in my future.
And how did you end up at Valley?
And so after coaching there, I was offered a job with the Chicago Cubs.
Okay.
So I took a hitting coach job in 2000 and the beginning of 2019 with them. Was there for a year until COVID hit. March 13th, 2020, I'll never forget because it was a Friday. We all got the news that we were going home. It was supposed to be a 2-week delay, and they were going to find out how to do it. If there was vaccine viruses, we're all going to come back. Well, we know how that ended up. So 2020 came along, and they finished up the season. There was no one in the stands. At the end of that year, with COVID and whatnot, there was a lot of wondering or traveling. Was it going to be the same way or not? And 2021, the now athletic director at Valley College, he had offered me a assistant job.
Okay.
As an outfield coach and a hitting coach over there, and Dave Malice was very welcoming with open arms. Went in there, coached there for a couple years. that team was electric. 2 years ago, they were top 10 in the nation, not just the state of California, but the nation. And learned the aspect of college baseball, which is a little different than coaching in pro ball, where the buy-in is higher here. And guys the grind is real, you know, it is real. These guys want to be there, and so fast forward to where we are now, to where junior college is, you're really starting to see how much more competition there is, and that grind. And the only difference I think now is we have so many kids that have this sense of entitlement. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because they've never had to deal with adversity. They've never had to, you know, we have all these travel ball teams now, and so I think the biggest disservice that parents do, or if your son is, you know, we'll say he's competing for a shortstop job on a 13, 14-year-old team. If dad doesn't think that, you know, little Johnny or Tommy is going to get all the at-bats or play all the innings, he pulls him from that team and he takes him to either a lesser team or a team that doesn't have a spot for his son to compete, where they just go in and play. And I understand it's about development and getting the reps, but I think nowadays we're doing this too much to where you don't have that competitive edge. So when guys get to the higher levels, it's harder for them to compete and deal with adversity.
And how do you handle that as a coach? I mean, I'm pretty sure you got guys that are at these top tier high schools. They think they're going to go to this Division I baseball college, and then they drop down to JUCO and they come with this attitude like, I'm just here for the short run, peace out, coach. How do you handle that?
You know, it's so everyone's journey is differently. Like, I was a one and done guy. We've had a few guys the last couple of years that happens with, and that takes a special talent. I mean, there's so much growing, there's so much maturity that needs to happen. And you look at some of these guys that are either bounce backs from Division I schools or these outstanding athletes that are in high school. Well, that's great, but you know, the game will speed up on you, and you know, at every level the game gets faster and faster and faster, like I was saying. But more or less now you have, if he can get one and done, I will support that. We don't, you know, I always say, guys, if all my guys are still here at the end of the year, I didn't do my job. My job is to get you to the next level. But it's understanding and being a realist on, you know, what you're able to do and how you're going to compete there. Are you that person that is just going to, you know, come in for 1 year because you throw 95, you command the zone, and you know, all these schools are knocking down your door? Well, unfortunately, that's not happening that much anymore because of the transfer portal and all the Division I roster cuts. You know, they've now gone to 34 guys. I've had a couple guys that had played for us the last couple of years that unfortunately were at good, solid Division I schools, mm-hmm. and they're reaching out saying they were one of the players that are cut, and they're now looking for a home, and can I help them find one? So it's real on competing, and at that next level, especially with NIL and the junior college and portal, the high school kid just really isn't coming in and just doing one and done unless he does something extremely special. So we have that conversation. If they can do it, I'll facilitate it, but most of them kind of realize when they get there and they see the competition, they see, you know, the expectations, they kind of buy in a little bit more.
And what's your advice to these high school kids that are taking the JUCO route? That's the reality. What advice would you give them? Because it feels like I'm taking a step back because I'm not going to this top tier school. What would you tell them? To
embrace it, to embrace the journey, embrace the grind. You know, it's hard for the high school kid because if you look at we'll just say that the guy is just an absolute stud as a true freshman.
Right.
He's walking into guys that are 21 and 22 years old that are bigger, stronger, faster, have been that level for a while. And the maturity level as well as the physical fitness is just, they're way ahead, and they will get there at some point. But they have to just embrace it. Being, you know, most of these guys that I see coming out of high school, and most high schools don't really lift. They don't have these guys in a weight room. They have no structure for them. They don't have them on a program when the spring comes. They'll lift in the fall, but once games come around, because of high school and the inability to be in the weight room or time, it just doesn't work. So we get them. I've got an amazing staff. My recruiting coordinator and pitching coach, Alex Vigaldi, has one heck of a routine that he gets these guys in. He's developed his own. He played with the Cardinals. He's taken stuff from his playing career, but as well as many other Major League Baseball organizations, and instilled it to where our guys are the ones that come in and really work hard. They reap the benefits of it.
And what's changed from the time you played and now? Like, you have this mentality of when you're a player and then a coach. How do you handle that?
I think the biggest issue that players have right now is because they have that cell phone, they have technology, and they have instantaneous access to their stats or to their at-bats, and you get to some of these bigger programs that have more technology, whether it's like even just a bat sense or blast or Rapsoda or all this other stuff, and they're chasing numbers. And the problem that I'm seeing with a lot of these guys are, especially on the pitching platform, is they're chasing all this high velocity, their personal records, their PRs. Well, the problem is they're going out and they're doing the weights, they're doing all this weighted ball stuff, and if a guy will just say he was 89 and 91 and locating his fastball, now he's throwing 93, but it's right down the middle and it's getting crushed. And the difference is there's so much information at their fingertips. They're chasing these things instead of actually just learning how to pitch correctly, or they want all this exit velocity or launch angle. It's changed the game tremendously. And although it is part of the game, I think that when I played compared to nowadays, all of these guys, they think that there's a certain number or certain criteria they have to meet. But what they don't understand is, if I'm a top of the lineup guy and I can run, I'm not expected to hit 10 to 12 home runs in junior college. I'm expected to have a high on base percentage, get my singles, steal some bags, read the ball in the dirt, and play really good defense. But you have some of these guys that are up there and they're thinking they need to lift the ball, and they're 5'11", 170 pounds. They can't hit the ball out of the yard, with 2 tries. So I think that guys not knowing their identity. When I played, I knew my identity. I knew my role was. I knew how I could help the team. But I think that, and that's some of the conversations I have with these guys early on, is what the expectations are. And that's one of the roles I think as a head coach, as I've really developed, is the communication factor. These guys, and I want them to always know and never guess where they stand. We redshirted some guys. They knew early on that was going to happen. Some guys knew they were going to be role players. Some guys that started out were starters and they lost their job because they couldn't cut it defensively. And you have some guys that stepped up and filled holes and just, like I said, with injuries, that just played positions that they didn't normally play. And you had other guys that, played 5-6 positions, but because they could hit, their bat kept them in the lineup.
Right. And this leads to my next question. What should players be expecting when they play for you and they enter that Valley College facility?
Well, it's the culture that we bring in and the buy-in. If you're uncoachable, or you think you're better than the program, or you think that you should come before your teammates, you're just playing in the wrong place. We preach the team atmosphere. Yes, baseball is an individual sport comprised of a team. And in order to do that, you have to be able to do your job. You have to be able to be a good teammate. You have to be able to, when guys are down, pick them up, and the same thing, they're going to pick you up. But when we were talking about accountability and responsibility, our practice starts at, for majority of them, they get out of school at 11:05. So our practices during the week start at 11:30. And I tell them early on, the gate to our field closes at 11:30. If I have not received a text by 11 o'clock, because yes, traffic happens, people get sick, your classes run late. If you haven't communicated to myself or one of the other assistant coaches by 11 o'clock and you show up late to practice, we send you home. If you do it a second time, we send you home for a week. On a third time, you're dismissed from the program. And that's just because if you're unable to communicate and talk and be accountable, how can we expect or depend on you to be there for game time or show up on time when you're needed? And most of them, I haven't had it happen yet. I had one guy dismissed in the fall because of it, but he was also a guy that was already missing his classes early on. So it just teaches the accountability, I think. So you need to be accountable, you need to be responsible, and you will get better at playing at Valley College. There's no doubt about it.
And what is your why?
I think it's because the bad taste that I had in my mouth, like I said, and I was our minor league player of the year 2 years in a row. I was on cloud 9. I was on quick fast track to the big leagues, and one guy ruined it for me. And I was out of the game for a long time. from 2000 to 2011, and that was kind of a cooling off period for me because of the bad taste that I had in my mouth. And it was at that point when I started getting around the young kids again, I realized how much I loved it. So I do it now because I think I have so much to offer as a coach, and I think that there's a lot of guys who could really benefit. It's just some guys you go to some programs and these guys, the coaches are great, not to bash or badmouth anyone, but they don't have the background or experience, and they try with everything they can. They really do. They want nothing but the best for the kids. But my why is because I think that every one of these kids that come out there, will they all make it to the next level? No. But it's the opportunity to really love this game and play it at a high level and compete. That's my why.
And the game's obviously changed now. You got like the Shohei Ohtanis hitting hardcore runs. What's your advice to the kids that want to be successful nowadays? Has it changed at all, or do you think it's still the same?
Be consistent. Whatever that is, if just to be consistent, have routines, understanding that. And I always give the example. If you go to an Angels game or a Dodgers game, and we'll just say Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, if you look on the field, you can't tell if they're 10 for their last 10 or 0 for their last 10. They carry themselves the same. And the problem that we have in this game is it's such an emotional roller coaster, and the ability to deal with failure. I mean, if you think about it, you are playing the most self-esteem destroying sport in the history of mankind. You fail 70% of the time, you end up in the big leagues. I fail 70% of the time at any job, or anyone does, they're fired.
Right.
But to try to get these guys to understand it and push through it, and it's going to get better, but and just try to minimize the mental aspect of it. That's the hardest part for these guys.
If a player's coming off their high school year and they're trying to get recognized by college, what would you recommend?
I think that you have so many kids nowadays that they had good junior years or up until their senior year, and they call it the senior slump, and guys might not have been able to have the year that they wanted. I think that you still need to reach out to schools. There's so many schools out there, and there's so many places to play, and nowadays, I know we talked about social media and guys chasing numbers and whatnot, but you have X and you have Instagram. Send your at-bats, there's emails. I get emails every single day from guys and players, and there's guys that I didn't know about that were out there. Guys from local high schools, because you got to remember, there's only one of me and my recruiting coordinator, and we've got hundreds of high schools to cover in this area. Send it out to these coaches. Be respectful in your email and just talk about who you are, where you're at, what you're looking to do. Are you are you a pitcher? Are you a position player? Do you do both? And it plants that seed. One, because it shows the initiative that you want to be there. But two, you send your video. It gives us a chance to look at you. And I think that's something that a lot of guys don't do because they just think they don't have what it takes to play at the next level when there's a lot to do. And unfortunately, some of those guys never play because we never get a chance to see them.
So what should an offseason look like for a player?
I think that it's player by player based. If you get a guy that's throwing a lot of innings, he may want to shut down for a while. You guy that didn't play a lot, we try to send them out for summer ball. But everyone should be working on if it's a pitcher that doesn't have command of a changeup or a slider, that should be on the front of his plate where he needs to really work on that. Or a guy that can run, doesn't know how to bunt. He goes out and plays summer ball. It shouldn't be worried about what's he hitting average wise. That entire summer should be learning how to drag bunt, push bunt. Guys playing multiple positions. You need taking ground balls, center fielders, catching fly balls, getting better on your routes. But most importantly, all off seasons, I think, they come down to the weight room. That's the time to get bigger, stronger, faster, build it, and then just maintain in the season.
All right, so we talked about your upbringing, born and raised in the Valley, JUCO, pros, back to coaching, giving back. My favorite question to ask after every interview is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I see myself in this exact same spot, but hopefully with a state championship. I believe that we have the resources. We definitely have the facilities. I have the best support staff from the president, the dean, the athletic director. I have the coaching staff, and I think in 5 years I will definitely still be at Valley, still be doing it, but hopefully, like I said, having a state championship.
I wish you the best of luck, Coach. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, brother.